Hello. So we're still getting situated into the new home. We rent, which is another reason why we grow indoor hydroponics and outdoor hydroponics, so we can take our plants with us. Unfortunately, the last house we were renting for 3 years got sold, and so did the previous one we were living in for a year and got sold. And we've actually moved 7 times in the last 5 years. And some of these trees, like the lemon, peach, avocado, have moved with us over 6 times in over 2 states. So I previously have been growing with this Veg Bloom bundle and HydroGuard. I'm going to continue to use this bundle for my trees and the remaining plants. In moving to the new house, I got rid of almost 30 to 40 plants, and I have about 50 plant buckets cleaned up and ready to go for this new growing season, which is going to be the winter. I'm going to be growing outside as well in this new house hydroponically, like the lemon tree we put outside recently. And just right now we're moving into colder months, so I'm focusing more inside. I want to move towards more all organic, made from home nutrients. So I want to discuss 3 different ways I'm going to attempt to do that, since I haven't done that yet. I've been using these for the last 5 years. If you've been watching my videos, we've grown an entire 16 room of strawberries, 4 tomatoes in a row where we've grown pounds and pounds of tomatoes. We keep the strawberries flowering year round rather than just one cycle, so we get strawberries all year for multiple years by keeping them in a consistent temperature and light schedule to trick them into thinking it's a certain time of year. Since when you grow indoors, if you want a certain result that you get outdoors, you have to mimic that result, like a flowering, like short day, long day, and day neutral. A day neutral plant will flower under any light schedule. A long day typically wants more than 12 hours of flower, and short day want less than 12 hours of flower. And I used to say that a short day could never flower under a long day, but I've seen some short day plants, if given long enough, end up flowering under short days. Or long day plants flowering under short days if given long enough. So sometimes we can get weird results indoors. The best way to get a consistent result would be to mimic what it would go through outside, whether you mimic the temperature or light schedule it goes through. But regardless, a lot of that stuff is in my other videos if you want to learn on just everything I know on how to grow hydroponic plants. That's pretty much what my whole channel is about. So the first method I'm going to experiment with is algae. And I've already experimented with this pineapple with growing with algae, but this is living algae in a non-food grade bucket that's white so that light can get in to keep the algae alive, where most of my buckets, or all my buckets, are black and are food grade buckets. So if this grows a pineapple, I'm not sure if I will even eat it. This was more of an experiment. It's the cracky method, so it relies on the water going lower in the bucket to come in contact with air. And I don't know what the EC is. So EC is how we measure, I could just throw an EC tester in there real quick. But EC is how we measure the nutrient density in the water. So for fresh transfers, like a seedling, I like 1 EC, and as they get up to a full-grown plant, we get up to like a 2.7 to 3 EC. And some plants won't flower until they reach a certain EC density. So normally I say we don't like algae in our hydroponic systems because they compete for oxygen. Algae will produce oxygen in sunlight and consume it in darkness, so it can start to compete for oxygen in the bucket with the plant. But we get more sunlight than we get darkness here. We were getting 16 hours, 15 hours of sunlight. So it's producing more oxygen, and this plant's been in this bucket for a year and a half, almost a year, and it's doing just fine. But that's not the method I'm going to try and experiment and grow with, because like you can see, all my buckets are black with air pumps, and algae likes light, so it won't survive in a dark environment, and it doesn't like movement, so the air pumps and the bubbles in there don't allow algae growth. So I'll show a hydroponic root pole on the side where you can see there's no algae growth in the buckets and the roots are pearly white. And so those are some of my best videos, which might have attracted some of you to this channel. So hello. but I'm going to be experimenting with dead algae, and I'm worried it might smell. So if I were to take the air pump out of some of these buckets, the environment will begin to change and fester a little bit, like this pepper plant. I originally wanted to kill and get rid of this pepper plant, so I chopped it at the base, and I kind of just left it aside and unplugged the air pump. The environment in here started to change, get a little gross. But the plant started to grow back anyway, and you can see it's almost been 6 months. This is a 3-year-old pepper plant. So we keep pepper plants growing year round, and I don't usually ever chop them at the base. They just keep, once they, after 3 months, produce their first round of peppers, for about 2 to 3 years indoors, they'll just keep producing peppers every 3 months. And this one had made it to the end of its 3 years. That's however long I usually get out of them. So I just chopped it at the base, put it aside, and it's coming back, which is miraculous. But if I put an air pump in it, the smell in the bucket starts to come up through, where the smell in the rest of these buckets I don't notice. It must not be, you know, that bad of a smell or toxic enough or whatever for me to notice the smell coming through the buckets. But if a plant is dying or dead or old and nasty, the smell coming up through the buckets is very toxic and very bad. It smells like ammonia, and it makes the whole house smell very bad. So that's why that does not have an air pump in it right now, and that's why some of those old strawberries from the 16 strawberry tent don't have an air pump in them right now, because I accidentally left it out for a couple days in some of them. So now when you put the air pump back in, it smells really, really bad. And that's what I'm worried about happening growing with the first method, which is going to be algae, which I believe we are going to try in 2 ways. This is the living algae way and the dead algae way. So as we walk past the potential next world's tallest Brussels sprout plant, the carnivorous plants, domes, create an environment where algae begins to form pretty thick in there. So if we siphon that algae out and test it, if you saw the short form video, it tests out to 1 EC. I'll show you guys how I do it. I'm trying to have a theme going where I make a short form video and send it out to the short form platforms, and then hopefully that engages people into the long form topic and discussion, since there's no way in 60 seconds I'm going to be able to get all my thoughts out, tell you guys what's going on, because a lot of people have questions like, why is this guy growing all these plants inside? Why don't you just grow them outdoors? And I do grow outdoors, and I had an apricot tree and a grapevine and all those things, but we had to leave them behind because we're renters, and it's not the right time to buy a house. Don't worry, we're good. I just don't want to buy a house right now. So I filled this tube up with water, because I'm not going to siphon it by putting like my mouth in it or nothing. And the water surprisingly looks just like regular nutrient water when we pump it out. So this algae is currently alive in there, but when we throw it in the black bucket and start pumping it around with water and air, the algae is going to die. And that's what I worry about, that smell coming through, but that's why we're going to throw in HydroGuard. And I think, 50-50, it'll turn out all right. So you guys will see the outcome of this later when I start it with some lettuce seeds. But right now I'm just trying to get those 3 methods or so down, just to show you guys and talk about them before we actually start doing them and move in that direction. So you can see that's testing out to above 1 EC, which I like for fresh transfers. So it looks good. Algae's got all the necessary NPK that plants need. So we'll see. I know Mike Van Duzzy. I always butcher his name. He's a really cool dude. He grows with algae in all sorts of containers, outdoors. If you can think of it, you can grow in it. You don't got to be a pro to grow. Just plant a seed, and it's a really rewarding and fun experience. So this is pretty much ready to go in a black bucket with a seedling, and begin our first test with our dead algae water. Now you might think, did that water just become that color from the soil of your carnivorous plants? No, because I have carnivorous plants over here, and their water was never under a dome. I don't have 4 domes, I only have 3. And their water stays clear. And this water doesn't, because you can see the environment in here gets a lot hotter because of this light, and it creates more of an environment where that can fester. So I don't smell anything from this. If I did, I wouldn't have it here. I don't want to create an unhealthy or bad environment. I know there's some people that get a delusion that I want to be unhealthy. I don't. I work out, eat right, exercise. My dad owns a gym. Was a personal trainer, wrestler. I was on my way to become a nutritionist, but changed my plans. And now I just want to grow really healthy food from home. And it's tough when you're a renter. So I want to try more organic ways that I can feel a little bit better about than the powders. Not that the powders don't do good and that they're not good for you or whatever. I'm sure they're all right. I've been eating them for years. But I always get some people in the comments that would just like things to be a little bit better, and I can agree. You know, some people don't like the plastic, but you know, I like containers. I'm able to move around and they're food safe and they're meant for this. They don't get overheated. Perhaps the ones outside will when they get exposed to the 110-degree sunlight in the summertime here. But I'm not really worried too much about the plant uptaking plastic or anything like that. I think this whole humans eat a credit card of plastic a week thing has really freaked people out a little more than it maybe should have. Sure, if you're eating or drinking from a water bottle or a Gatorade or whatever you left out in the sunlight, it's going to have a bunch of microplastics in it. And I'm not saying that there's not microplastics in modern day food from packaging and stuff, but I don't worry too much about a plant uptaking it. But you can use your own personal discretion, grow in whatever you want. I'm just showing you what works for me. I didn't go to school for this. This is all just stuff I've learned over the last 5 years. And I just show you what works for me. If you want to copy it and it work for you, that's up to you. If you don't like something I do and you want to change it, you can always experiment and try whatever you like on your own. I don't want people to feel like I'm telling you this is like the one way or how to do something. Often when you're new to something and someone's teaching you something, it can feel like that's the way. And this is a way. And it works for me. And I have a pretty good understanding of plants. The roots just need a steady supply of oxygen. When you have a dirt plant and you overwater it, you're not really overwatering it, you're under oxygening it. That's why a plant's able to survive in water submerged and it doesn't drown, because it's being supplied oxygen, not because you overwatered it. So a lot of people are confused, like an aloe vera. It's crazy you have an aloe vera living in water, but it has adequate supply of oxygen and therefore the plant won't drown. Where a plant in a soil condition like aloe, you might make drown if you supply too much water. So I'll let you guys know how these methods go. I will show you in short form and long form. Like I said, I want to have a trend going where I make a short form video, put it out to the masses, and then a long form video to get in the deeper conversation. And show you guys a lettuce plant that's been grown with this and the two other methods I'm going to talk about, or maybe even a combination of all of them. Since, like I said, this might have the necessary NPK plants need, but it could still be considered a low density, even the other methods I'm going to talk about. If you mix in other things, you can get different amounts of NPK. But regardless, I think they'll all do well and fine. I don't ever really stress over the NPK thing. I've always used the same NPK for all my plants, and usually when I make a how to grow plant videos, I always talk about the NPK that the plant wants and then just what I end up giving it anyway. So we're gonna move to the next method. It's in the garage where I'm showing you guys how I make my own compost for my own compost tea. So we'll move over there. All right, so we're in the garage with the Lomi. I'm going to talk about the second and third way, our compost teas, just different methods. So the third way would be a compost tea I'm going to try with worms and their worm castings. I tried this in the previous house, but in the last house was a lot worse built than this one, with a lot more holes in it and cracks, and I was renting, so I couldn't really do much about it. There was scorpions, roaches, flies, fungus gnats, and all sorts of different aphids on the apricot tree and grapevine. I can't remember the names of them right now. But yeah, there was a lot of different bugs and pests in that house, and this house has none of those. So I haven't seen a single scorpion, roach, The only thing I saw is a couple mosquitoes. This place pretty much has like nothing living here, which is really awesome. When I had the worms in the last house, so many things were drawn to the smell of the worms, and I had their environment in a bucket, but just one bucket. I saw the Acorn Labs, another channel you guys should check out. He has a worm bucket system where he uses 2 buckets, and his system works really, really well. So I'm actually going to copy his system, and I'm going to use the worm castings to make compost tea. So that's where you put the worm poop in cheesecloth, like the cheesecloth I have in this bag right now, and soak it for 24 hours in 5 gallons of water up to the EC that you're looking for. So I don't have any worms or worm castings right now. I'm going to get worms and buckets and work on that. I just wanted to make sure I follow the Acorns Labs tutorials on it and do it correctly, because I raised worms when I was a kid, and I did it with a compost bin. I never did it with a bucket. So when I did it with a bucket in the last house, I had a lot harder time with it, especially with the bugs in the house. So I'm going to be experimenting with worm castings, and in this house I don't think I'll have as many of the bug issues. And it will be the same way that I'm making that compost tea right there, but that is not worm castings. That was a compost I made from dead organic matter in the Lomi. So I don't have a compost bin, again, because of renting and moving around, and it attracts pests and bugs. One thing we have here are like the little geckos and lizards. Again, I didn't grow up here, so I don't know what they're called. People always correct me on stuff in the comments on like everything all the time. So if I get something wrong, I am human. I'm sorry. My bad. They're like little lizards and geckos. It's awesome. It reminds me of Florida. We're in southern Nevada. So anyway, the Lomi is like an electric composter, and it's got 3 different methods if you've never checked it out. They aren't sponsoring me. I do have an affiliate link down below, and there you can see all the gear I use, and in the corner it'll show you like a little description of what I use it for. And I think the Lomi is on that list, and I do get a percentage of like a purchase if you made it, but it's honestly pretty small. And I don't really do the channel because of that, and most of my videos get demonetized because of the plant nutrients and the mask and the gloves I have to wear with them, which is another reason why I'm trying to make this switch. Maybe now my videos won't get demonetized. I try to appeal them. I follow all the safety precautions. I don't cuss. I don't do anything wrong. And a lot of them do get appealed, but it happens on YouTube and Facebook because I guess some of the words I say might get flagged as potentially dangerous, maybe because of the nutrients and I'm mixing stuff up. I always warn you guys to use gloves and mask and eye protection whenever you touch something, which is why I have gloves here. But the Lomi is essentially just an electric compost bin. It's got 3 different settings, and there's a bunch of different stuff you can throw in it. So, you know, a 3 to 5 hour setting, I tested just with some leaves from my backyard, and it came out like this. Also, I save all the leaves from my backyard and my entire hydroponic garden right below the rig, which we are crypto mining Flux right now. We survived after ETH 2.0 years ago. Bitcoin up, Dogecoin up. We back up. I use it as a heater now in the winter. It's not profitable to run in the summertime really, but it does make money. Made a lot more money before ETH 2.0. Anyway, the leaves, I saved them all. And some of those leaves have been in those bags for over a year or 2, and some of them had a little bit of moisture in them. So like this one, for example, has been in there for over a year with a little bit of moisture, and you can see how broken down that is. If I move it around a little bit with this, you can see it's very, very, very dead and decomposed in there. Versus this that was taken a couple weeks ago out of the backyard. So don't worry, I save all my dead plants, leaves, and everything. Everything's going to get recycled and reused. So then I did the next mode, which was 5 to 8 hours. Came out a little more fluffy. Then we have the 16 to 20 hour one. I like how this one looks. But that was all from fresh leaves in the backyard. So that's trying to speed up the decomposition process. I did a batch of just that one and a little bit of fresh leaves. And I will show a clip of it because in the short form video, I actually put it in cheesecloth and put it in our first batch of compost tea. So that one actually came out looking really good, really fluffy, like really good dirt. NPK, leaves have all the NPK plants need. Different leaves have different NPK in them. Like if you're gonna use basil leaves or banana, it's gonna have different than an avocado, lemon, peach. All these leaves have different chemical makeups a little bit. Food scraps, you can throw a bunch of different stuff in the Lomi. Right now I've just been using leaves. In the future I might do some series where I try to grow plants out of just weird things we've thrown in the Lomi. So just for some examples, you could throw some meat scraps, seafood, fish and bones, eggs and eggshells, coffee grounds, grains, oats, legumes, plants and yard trimmings, nuts and seeds, soft peels, pretty much any organic matter. Don't overdo it. There's a little fill line. And then you can use the accelerating composter pod. These are all organic. I wanted to make sure they were organic. They are. Because I want this process to be all organic. I get it, we're using electricity, but it's heating up the garage. It's the winter time. This thing uses about 500 watts, but it gets warm and only periodically on different settings. I do have a wall outlet thing. I'll see how much money it costs to run it for 16 to 24 hours a day. I'm not really worried about the electricity costs of it at 500 watts, periodically only when it gets up using the heating element. I'm sure most of the time it's honestly pulling only 30, 40, 60 watts, even when it's grinding, maybe 120 watts, 200 watts at most with the motor. The heating element is probably where it uses most of the wattage, and it's not on all the time. But I'm sure someone will get on me for the fact that, you know, it's an electric compost bin. You know, you're supposed to be a gardener. You know, why don't you just do it outside? But obviously we've discussed that, like, in headache by this point. Dairy products, nuts and nut butters, pizzas and pastas, syrups and confectionaries, that's small amounts. The stuff I said before was like, go for it. This is like small amounts because it's a little like more heavier stuff, like dairy products. And then the never. So never do bones. Oh, in the beginning it said fish bones. I guess just fish bones, not real bones, like chicken bones, hard bones, anything you can't like mash up with a blender. Cooking oils and butters, don't use any cooking oils or butters. Fruit pits, cooked potatoes. It's not really a Lomi review, but I like them. Maybe if they send me another one, I'll do one, because I bought this one. But yeah, so like I said, leaves have all the NPK plants need. Obviously, those leaves are more decomposed over the last year. They make better compost that's fluffier, easier for the plants to access all the nutrients in it. It's decomposed more. There's more microbacteria in that soil that's developed over the last year than this stuff, especially with the Lomi compost accelerator that has a bunch of funguses and bacteria in it that's really good for your plants. So I just threw in these leaves with an accelerator. I haven't done that yet. These are all without the accelerator, so we'll see how that one comes out. Again, this isn't a how-to video. This is a more of a how I'm gonna video. One day when I perfect this method and the algae method and other stuff, I'll make like how-to videos. But you can still like use this as a how-to or learn something off of it, or leave in the comments recommendations you might have. I'm sure people will let me know, you know, leaves don't have enough, throw in this, throw in eggshells, throw in that. I will. I'm just doing leaves right now and seeing what we can get out of just leaves from the backyard and from my plants. But I have this in cheesecloth with UC tester. This has only been in here for about 2 hours, and we're already up to 0.9. Hey, that's higher than it was last time. It was at 0.7 when I last checked, and around 0.4 around 10 minutes after I immediately threw it in. Oh, 1 EC. Sweet. So that's already high enough for a fresh transfer. So I'm going to get a lettuce seed growing. We're going to make some compost tea just like that and use that as our new plant nutrients. And we'll see how that goes. If it's a little too low in NPK and we don't get big peppers when we grow peppers out of it, then, you know, we'll maybe mix it with the algae to get different NPK solutions. And throw in banana peels and, you know, other organic matter than just leaves to get a different compost makeup. But generally what I'm just trying to show you guys is that it can get messy, but there's definitely ways to organically make liquid nutrients without the powders. I don't want to have to keep purchasing those powders either. And I've been saving these for years in the hopes to do this. I bought this thing like a year ago and just haven't gotten around to do this because we've been really busy. And it's just really time consuming to clean up all those 50 plant buckets and move. We've moved 7 times in the last 5 years. It's a lot of moving and stuff. So anyway, so I forgot to add that when this is done making this batch of nutrient water, I'm going to open up the cheesecloth and get that soil out of there and save it. I'm not going to be like getting rid of anything at all. And I'll probably just have a pile of stuff that I have soaked, haven't soaked. It'll all get thrown back in a compost bin or a Lomi at some point. And when I do buy a house, I will have raised beds with my own soil. And so yeah, I'm going to be holding on to all this soil or using it at some point regardless, no matter what. I just don't want you to think that that is like a one-time use thing. I'm going to get a lot of uses out of that and probably even be able to make more batches out of it, hopefully. But we'll see. This is kind of like my introduction into this field of organic plant liquid nutrients. We'll see how it all goes. But yeah, forgot to add that too. All right, so I'm going to add some HydroGuard. I don't really measure anymore because you can't really add too much. I got it plugged into an air pump. I just squirt a little in there with 2 poked holes since you really add 2 milliliters every time you water. And then I'm going to leave it covered overnight with tin foil in the dark. And it's about 50, 60, 70 degrees as the temperature fluctuates with the air pump. Should be all right. So I let the compost tea sit overnight and with some oxygen and HydroGuard. And it's testing out to 1.95 last I saw. There we go, even higher, 2.1. So that's plenty for our plants. I took an EC test of the pineapple and it was 1.9. So this is actually higher than the algae you saw growing the pineapple in the beginning of the video. And most of my full grown plants I bring up to 2.5, 2.7 EC. So looks like we're getting dense enough. And in the next future video, I'll update you guys on how growing with it goes. It is reverse osmosis filtered water that I use. You might get a little bit different results with tap water. I also forgot to say that. So I'll have some more long form videos out soon in short form where I show you guys the plants we're going to be growing with those solutions we just made and are going to make. Also an update to the hydroponic lemon we recently put outside in comparison to the indoor hydroponic lemon. And that whole video is a topic of its own. Down below, I'll have the affiliate link listed to all the products we use. And in the top right-hand corner, you can see what we use them for if you have any questions. Also, I'll have my How to Grow Hydroponic Plants playlist for you here on YouTube. At the end of the video, you could click it. Or what YouTube recommends is best for you. Also, down below, we'll have the eBay link listed to our Ditch to Flock eco-friendly merch. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. I really appreciate it.